Good morning. Welcome to Exploding Word Ministries. We're going to look at a bit of Bible study today. What we want to look at is the story of Jonah. Jonah in Scripture, we are told, was sent by God to go to the town of Nineveh to bear witness that God was going to destroy the town and all the inhabitants of the town within a period of 40 days. However, we quickly find within the story that Jonah doesn't believe God will do it. It's not that Jonah doesn't believe God could do it, or that he doesn't believe that God spoke to him, but rather from his own understanding of how God works and what God is like, he reasons that God will not destroy the entire city of Nineveh as he has indicated. So why did Jonah feel this? Why was this a problem to him? This is what I'd like to look at today, and I'd like to explain it in such a way as to maybe give us a bit of understanding as to why and what was happening and how this actually affects Jonah. We know that Jonah's reaction to this was to take himself, so to speak, out of Israel, and he took ship and headed off to go to foreign ports, so to speak, away from Nineveh and away from where he was being told to go and what he was being told to do. The interesting concept is that we find that Jonah is asleep when a great storm takes up. Now, storms are very regular occurrences in the Bible, and it usually means it's problems, difficulties. There's things in nature that are being adjusted and destroyed and changed and altered, and basically people are very concerned about storms. They don't like storms. We don't like storms. But the sailors had noticed that this particular storm had a lot of ferocity that they weren't used to and they didn't know how to respond to. They had got rid of all their cargo, they had sliced the sails, they had brought everything down, they had tied everything they could to things, they had done everything they could to make the ship as oblivious to the storm as they could, and yet the storm kept coming, and they realized that it would just be a matter of time before they were going to be killed. So the captain gave an order. Everyone who was on the ship, both sailor and passenger, should contact and pray and make petition to their gods on behalf of the entire ship. Now, this was an interesting concept, but you must understand these people realized that there were forces, spiritual forces at work that could influence what was happening around about them. So as a result, this was not an unusual request under these circumstances. When the sailors, however, go hunting around to make sure that everybody is aware of this order, they find Jonah asleep, totally unaware of what's going on, totally unconcerned. So they wake him up and they bring to his attention, what the captain's complained about, that there's a strong possibility that they're going to sink and that everybody's going to lose their life, and that he needs to contact his God and ask to be delivered. Jonah doesn't bother with that. He says he needs to see the captain. So they take him to the captain, and he says to the captain, "Captain, I apologize. This storm was all to do with me. It's been caused by my God, and the only way that you're going to be able to get the storm ended is if you throw me overboard." Now the captain looks at him. Now, you must understand this. One, it doesn't do business, no matter where in history you've been, any good if you throw paying passengers into the sea. It just isn't good for business. Reputation can ruin a business doing that. So this was the last thing the captain wanted to do. The idea of this appalled him. The second thing there, though, was that Jonah hadn't actually asked his God why or what was going on. He simply had stated that he was the cause. But the captain tried everything. He went through the whole concept of every other possibility before agreeing to do as Jonah had suggested. They tied Jonah up and threw him over the side. They knew the God that he was worshipping was the almighty ever-living one. They knew this was the God that the Jews and the Israelites would have said is the only true God. They were aware of all the cultural differences and problems and difficulties, but they also were aware of their own gods and all the different things that they'd come across. The moment Jonah went over the side of the boat, a large fish, now traditionally we're often told it was a whale, but we don't actually have that word in the Bible. Just a large fish has been prepared by God to swallow Jonah whole. And this is what the sailors see. A large fish coming up as Jonah's thrown over, and it just swallows him. The moment the fish drops into the water again, the storm ceases. Total calm. The captain and all the crew and all the passengers become aware of just what has happened here. Here is a situation where they've had evidence of a direct intervention of a great God. Now that's stupid. So what they do is they honor that God. They begin to make supplications and sacrifices to the God of Israel, who becomes their God because of this one witness of his power and might. He is a true God who isn't a localized God of just one area, but appears to cover the entire earth, even the sea. This had a great effect on them, and they asked to be forgiven for the destruction of a life, as was requested by that God. For all intent and purpose, this looks as if the story might have come to an end there. A prophet had not done what was commanded of him, and as a result ended up being punished, destroyed at sea. Except Jonah wasn't dead. This fish was large enough for him to live in its stomach. He existed inside the fish. There was enough air and oxygen for 3 days and 3 nights. This is important to understand. Jonah existed in the belly of the whale, in the bowels, as it were, of death. Alive. He was alive there, while dead. Because over a period of time, he could never get out. Now, as the fish swam around the ocean, there was no problem here. He wasn't going to be affected by the water. He wasn't going to have a problem that way, but there was a limitation as to how long he could be here. So, from that position in the whale's belly, or the fish's belly, I see that how traditionally we use this idea of whale, but we can't because we don't know if it is a whale. But from this aspect of being in the fish's belly, we find that Jonah is praying and praying to God. And in his prayer he says, "Look, Father, I know I left for one reason, because I didn't want to carry that message to Nineveh, because I truly don't think you're going to destroy the city. But if you want me to take that message to Nineveh, I will do it." And as soon as he had agreed to this, he became aware of the fish rejecting him out of its body. It literally vomited him up. Now, when he got his bearings, Jonah discovers that he's on the right area to go to Nineveh. Nineveh is a magnificent city. It's 3 days journey just to get to the center of it. That's approximately a city about a journey of 60 miles. So you've got to understand that's a long, big city. Nineveh was no small place. But more importantly, Nineveh was a city of sailors. It was a city of people who believed in Dagon, the fish god, or the fish-headed god. So when people had seen, and don't misunderstand, people had seen a man being vomited up out of a large, massive fish that they hadn't seen the like of before, and him getting up, taking himself down, and heading to a city, the word about him had got there before. So when he arrives in the center of the city and starts his proclamation, in 40 days, the living God of Israel, the Almighty, the Holy One, is going to destroy this city, man, woman, child, and beast. And then just walks out of the city, heads up to a height overlooking the city, and sits and waits. Word got to the king. He had heard all the story. He had heard how this man's arrival in the city had been forecasted because of a fish had vomited him up. He had heard that the man hadn't bothered with anything else. He merely gave a proclamation from the God of Israel, and that it was a prophet from Israel that had come. He was aware of the power and might and talk. There was even discussions about a particular storm where an individual only 3 days earlier had been cast into the sea and swallowed up. He also was a prophet from Israel. Could the two be the same? Was it possible that this was the same being? You see, the king didn't know. But what he did know is that every aspect of what was going on indicated that what this prophet was saying could happen. But what do you do when a God decides to destroy your city? You make peace. And that's what the king ordered. He says, I want every single man, woman, and child in Nineveh, even the animals, to fast. I want everybody dressed in sackcloth. I want ashes used on all bodies. I want you to humble yourself before the God of Israel and ask for his favor. Ask for his forgiveness. Ask him to interact on our behalf so that we are not destroyed in his wrath. Jonah is still sitting, watching the city. He's looking. 40 days has just completed. There's no fire. There's no brimstone. There's no destruction. The prophet is annoyed. Now, sometimes we don't fully understand why. And let's just take a moment and think about this. Here we have a prophet of Israel. Now, one of the biggest difficulties is if a prophet makes a proclamation, that proclamation has to happen. If it doesn't happen, then the prophet's considered to be false. And everything he said, no matter how good work he had done, is recognized as being wasted because it couldn't have been of God, because God ensures that the words of his prophets all happen. So we know that why Jonah is annoyed. As a prophet of Israel, as a renowned prophet in Israel, this concept will have caused him great bother. So he's annoyed. He's annoyed because he knows he is a true prophet. And he's annoyed because God has let him down. God has taken away, as it were, and sent him on a fool's errand. And God says, why are you so angry with me? And the prophet tells him, he says, well, look, didn't I say this at the very beginning? Isn't this why I headed off by myself? Isn't this why I decided it was better to face your wrath than to show disgrace to your name? Because you won't do this. Didn't I say that? And didn't I tell you why you wouldn't do it? Because you're a God of love, a God of concern, a God of compassion. You are the God who wouldn't destroy people without giving them a warning. And you didn't give them a warning. You told me to tell them they were to die. God caused a tree to grow overnight. And the hot sun was eased from hitting on the prophet for a few hours. And he was thankful for it. It was nice to have that tree growing there and in the shade of it, giving him a chance to reflect, but he was still angry with God, even though God had done it. So that night, God caused a small worm to attack the tree. The tree swiveled and died overnight. And the prophet was really annoyed. He says, why would you give me a beautiful tree and then allow such a beautiful tree to be destroyed by this worm? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? And then God asked him, why are you annoyed about a tree? It's only a tree. I can grow another tree anytime. Why are you annoyed about this tree? Well, the tree, it had a right. It should have been allowed to stay. It was doing good. It didn't do any harm. It never done anybody any harm. In fact, it was only there for a benefit. Why are you so annoyed about this tree? But yet there are so many people, hundreds of thousands of people in that city of Nineveh. And you want me to destroy them? Even though they repented. What do we learn from this story? Well, the first thing is the story has another story attached to it, and that is the story that Jesus gave us about the sign that he was giving to the Jews that he was the Messiah. And that is, Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a whale, or belly of a great fish. See, we're at that whale again. So he, Jesus, would be 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth. Let's take this for a wee stage further, though. A prophet is only known when he fulfills what he says. We know as Christians that Jesus Christ resurrected, but that's 2,000 years ago. If Jesus Christ was resurrected exactly as he said he was, would there be circular proof to confirm this? And the answer is, of course, there is. There was no body found when the priests and the Levites and the Romans went to investigate. Nobody stole the body because a Roman guard had been there along with the temple guard. And while a story was concocted, none of the Roman officers of the day accepted it as true, but recognized it as a political device by the priests and the Levites to describe someone they couldn't describe. You see, the people knew that Jesus Christ had resurrected. They knew that Jesus Christ wasn't dead anymore. We're told by Paul, that up to 500 individuals witnessed Jesus' resurrected body over the 40-day period that he walked with them, talked with them, and instructed them. 500 people of all walks of life witnessed Jesus Christ. That's why Christianity is the only religion in the world that has such evidence to support it. Nobody denies that Jesus Christ is real. Nobody denies that he exists as a historical character. And there is no evidence to support that he didn't resurrect. Nothing. Now, we have evidence to show that he was crucified. We have evidence to show that he was buried. We have evidence to show that he was dead. But we have no evidence that will support anyone's claim that the body of Jesus Christ was moved. And that's because it wasn't. He resurrected. He came to life. A prophet is known by what he says. And Jesus said, by the sign of Jonah. Now, let me say something else. Some people say the sign of Jonah is a bit ambiguous. They'll even go as far as to say, well, maybe Jonah didn't exist. Maybe what actually was recorded in the Bible about Jonah isn't true. But let me put this. If you're going to give a sign as a definition of something that has to happen, it's very unlikely that you're going to give a sign that everybody thinks is not true. So from the Jews of Jesus' day, they did not for 1 second, and remember you're talking educated individuals, historians even, of secular culture as well, who are aware that these things were records that existed in their day. Yes, I know some of them don't exist for us today. There's been a lot of history over 2,000 years. But look what still is there. We cannot deny that Jesus Christ resurrected, and we cannot deny that he's alive today. Therefore, we shouldn't deny that the story of Jonah and his encounter with a large fish and his encounter with God over the city of Nineveh is true as well. This is William Andrews, Exploding Word Ministries, just looking at a few things from the Bible to help build our faith.